Okay. Okay. Hi everyone. So following a bit of technical difficulties on my side, so you guys, it's a pleasure to have you here today. We have Whitney, CEO from LifeBridge Capital. It's a equal pleasure to have him as well. And he currently manages 150 million. You can correct me, with Whitney, of assets under management, which he has built since 2017. He also has a podcast that he runs where he has done like over 1,000 episodes of that. He has great experience in the field. I think he has a lot of sort of methodologies for like scaling your business and like being productive on a daily basis and things like that, which I would be happy to learn from him on that. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Whitney. If you guys have any questions, feel free to put them on the chat, and we'll relay it all in the end. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefan. Appreciate the honor. I'm just honored to be here. Remind me how long I have.
It's flexible. We go typically for 45 minutes, and then we do a 15-minute Q&A.
Okay, cool. Sounds great. Sounds great. I want to get started. Thank each of you for being willing to be here. And I hope that this is valuable to you. I'll share numerous parts of my journey. And, one way I want to share a secret with you, and I want to share some things about how I went from raising, $250,000 in a few weeks to raising over $10 million consistently in a few hours. It definitely did not happen overnight, but in that first 250,000, it took me many, many weeks. It's so much work, but it was networking for probably 2 years almost before I could even do that. But many things changed. We've learned a lot, and now obviously it's much easier to raise the money, the capital that we need. But I want to tell you some critical things that shape my mindset, my mission, my how, and I want to teach you to be not to be transaction focused, but loyalty focused. And it's just very important that you think about that, that you are, as you are growing your syndication business, that you are loyalty focused and not transaction focused. And we're going to get more into that because I feel like it's such an important part that most people gloss over, and I did as well. I did as well in the very beginning. And I did not focus enough on how I'm building loyalty. So what is the secret to scaling fast? And that secret, in front of a lot of, live audience, I like to ask, does anybody know that secret? And one of the secrets to scaling fast is you must show up to give. And it is a mindset shift. And oftentimes people say, that's nonsense or whatever. But when you show up to give, and I don't mean just, when you're speaking to a group or, big things, but I mean like even in individual settings, when you are at a meetup and you're speaking to someone, it changes your mindset just even on that conversation, right? And it changes the words you say. It changes how you present yourself. It changes the questions that you ask, right? And that person all of a sudden feels like they're cared for, right? Or like, it's a different conversation than everybody else they've had conversations with. And we're going to talk more about that. But it is a mindset shift, and you need to show up to give. Especially when you're working with investors. So over the last 2 years, 150 million, I think we have quite a bit more than that now, but I can't remember how much we have under contract right now as well. It does say 85 million, and that's probably more than that now. But we actually should have a contract today on a project that we're selling also, but 900 units roughly under management. Actually, I also have 3 new development projects under construction right now. We've interviewed almost 1,100 industry leaders on our daily podcast. And yes, it caused my network of investors and industry leaders to explode. So that success did get me on many stages. And again, I'm proud to be here. So in March of 2001, And again, I want to share some things with you to help shape who I am, shape some of the things that I just want to expose to you so you can be thinking about these and maybe how you can implement them as well. But in March of 2001, I decided to join the military. And I just knew that it was the right thing to do. There really wasn't a question about it. Actually, a best friend and I at the time who joined the military together within just a day or two of each other. And again, that was in March. And so, it wasn't until September of that year that our nation was attacked. So we didn't have any idea, obviously, we would be going to war, but we did. We found ourselves shortly after spending a year in Iraq and toting around a machine gun, praying every day we get to go home. Unfortunately, not everyone in my squad made it home. But that military experience taught me a lot. Military in general taught me a lot. But one thing they taught me is to have a never give up mentality. And I encourage people, like, you're starting a business, you're starting as an entrepreneur, you're starting, especially in the syndication business, and you just have to have the mentality that you're not going to give up. You already know ahead of time it's going to be difficult, right? Going into combat, you have to perform. People are depending on you. Your life and others are depending on you. And so in this business, I just feel like, my team and my family and all our investors are depending on me and us to perform. And so that was something just the military taught me. Came home and I tried to figure out what I was going to do as a path, as a career. And I thought of policing was an easy segue, right? To go from military right into law enforcement. There was 1,200 applicants for 5 positions. I was blessed to have one of those with Kentucky State Police, and loved working the road. I did. I loved working the road. I would have done it the first couple of years for free. However, you know what? I had an income problem. We're making like $25,000 a year and working all the overtime I could possibly work to get over $30,000 a year. But I had the worst schedule possible. And so my wife, Chelsea, it sent us on a mission to figure out a way to supplement my income. And this was in 2009. And in came real estate, right? I discovered at this time that not only had 1 or 2 people built wealth in real estate, but hundreds of thousands of people had built wealth in real estate. And I thought, okay, if that many people can do it, then, hey, I can do it too. I can do something, right? I can supplement my income at least a little bit. And so that's what sent us on that path in real estate in 2009. I also became a federal agent, and that moved us to Virginia, where we live now. And believe it or not, while I was in Virginia, that is me on top of that horse. I started training horses professionally. I've been riding for a long time, and I started another business where I was training horses. I was still a federal agent. I still had rental units, and I had up to like a 15 unit at this time too, and thought that I was really doing something. But I show this because I'm going to tell you something else about this story that I hope you can relate to, or that may help you. But this was a passion of mine since I was a little boy. Was to be able to ride horses. And I was doing clinics and teaching people all over the country. I was selling horses for more money than I ever imagined. And so it was like a dream to be riding horses at that level and training. But you know what? I was working full time. I was training at night. I had 2 little boys at this time, Samuel, Elijah, which you'll see in a minute. And I never saw them. And my wife, Chelsea, I was sacrificing that time that was so important. And so I just bring that up because you may have a passion that's kind of holding you back. Right. And ultimately what we did at this time was decide to sell the farm. And my wife and I were on the beach, and we were walking one fall on the beach, and we were just praying and thinking about our future. Right. And I encourage you to, do you have thinking time? And maybe it's with your spouse or your business partner or whoever, but do you have thinking time? And I look back at this and I think, you know what? I didn't even know it, I didn't even call it thinking time then, but we were just really reflecting on where are we going? Can we keep doing this for a year, even much less 3 years or 5 years? And it was obvious that it was not what was best, again, for our family. And I just couldn't. And so, you know what? We said, we know that commercial real estate is going to have a more likelihood of building wealth, long-term wealth for our family, and even creating more time, right? So we said, you know what? We're going to sell the farm and completely commit to commercial real estate. We're going to stop that business, that, just so it's not a distraction whatsoever. And we did. We sold the farm and moved into a house in town. These are the first 2 triplexes to a smaller multifamily project that I bought in 2009. And I mean, this was a project that, man, I learned a lot on the hard way. We self-managed, and it just very hard to scale, right? It's very hard to scale with single family, small multifamily. But at this time, we learned a lot the hard way. We thankfully didn't lose any money, but we didn't make any either. But we did gain a lot of knowledge and really the desire to scale as well. Started the podcast, over 1,100 days now, interviewed experts. And one thing I'll point out about this podcast, and one thing I'll say about the 1,000 days, every day, 7 days a week, and everybody asks, has it been worth it? Has it been worth it? And I say, well, of course it's been worth it. I mean, if you look at our business, there's a direct connection to how we've scaled. However, another part of that is that pushing to do a daily podcast, doing something bigger. I talk about it often where overcommitting. All right. And how overcommitting sometimes can be a good thing, because it's like, it gets you out of your comfort zone in many, many ways. But for one, doing a daily podcast, that's just one way that I've overcommitted, and it's pushed me to build teams, to hire people, and to scale in ways that I never imagined before. So, if you think about, doing something one time per month, whatever it may be, well, think about what if I had to figure out a way to do it 10 times per month? Like, what kind of systems would I have to have in place? And who would I have to have on my team to be able to manage that? Right? What systems do I have to have in place to have 5 investor calls a week? Well, what if it's 25 investor calls a week? How do I scale that? And then work towards that right now, right? Work towards that right now. And I'll tell you an even example of that recently that I had to just work through mentally, myself, is those investor calls specifically. I take I put a lot of weight on those, right? I take them very personally. Like I wanted to take all those calls, and I have been since the beginning, and just as hard as I can go. And because I want that interaction with our investors, I want to be able to ask those questions. I want them to know we care about them, all those things. But you know what? It finally hit me just like 3 months ago that I was like, okay, if I'm going to double our investor income, inbound leads, investor leads, it's just not even possible. It's not possible for me to take all those calls. And so right then I was like, okay, I should already be operating that way. I should be training someone now that they can start taking some of these calls from me now, so we can scale to that faster. And that's what I did. Once that light bulb went off that, hey, it's not possible right now for you to take that many, you got to put systems in place. And by overcommitting, one of the first big things was the daily podcast. But it pushed me in ways that's made me grow that I never expected. So our big why is behind, what's behind all this? Some of you may have heard me speak about this, but if that mission and that why behind what you are doing is so important. And I hope that you are thinking about that. 160 million orphans in the world, and it costs $40,000 to $60,000 to adopt. My wife and I, we had moved to Roanoke actually when I took that federal agent position, and we heard a pastor talk about how they had adopted, how it can cost 40 to 60 grand to bring a child home through adoption, and just the need, right? 150 to 60 million orphans in the world. We had never been exposed to adoption, but it was easy. I mean, it wasn't easy. It seemed easy at the time for us to make that decision to move forward. Right. And we were on our way home. We kept asking ourselves, why would we not adopt? I mean, it just seemed like the right thing to do. And so within a week, we turned in our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And 2 years later, our first son, Samuel, came home from Ethiopia. A year after that, our second son, Elijah, came home through adoption. And now we also have a daughter, Eden Joy, who's 2 years old, who came to our family through adoption. And so because of this, we want to help other families adopt. And so we started the LifeBridge Foundation, and that foundation helps families financially to commit, right, to adopting. And many families will say, well, that's, 40 to 60,000. That's more than I'm making a year. There's no way that I can do that. There's no way we can commit to that. And so that's where we want to come along beside them to help them to commit, to bringing their child home through adoption. But the importance of your why, right? And that importance of that why is changed everything for us. And now it's changing everything for many other families and many children for generations. So it's just been incredible to see what the Lord has done there in that path. And also having that mission. When you're embarking on a journey like this to start a business, many of you probably already know this, but if not, I mean, it's going to be difficult, right? And you and your spouse, it's so important you're on the same page, right? It's so important. And oftentimes, it's difficult, right? People, they're trying to educate their spouse at the same time they're getting educated so they can stay up, on page. But it's very difficult if they're not motivated about the same mission. And so for us, for Chelsea and I, it was crucial that we're on the same page. And this is one way that we did that. And is she's not into real estate. She doesn't work for the business. But you know what? She's behind our mission 110%. And so it's just something I encourage you to think about as you are embarking on this journey. Like what's your spouse, are they involved in some way, but really, are you on the same mission? Are they behind it? So a couple of things I had to change, right? I had to better understand our mission. And I had to change on a daily basis what I did. And I see early on, it was as easy as changing my morning routine and realizing that, hey, I was wasting that time in the morning and even sleeping in, I was wasting it. Right. And so when I was in consistent education mode in the mornings, whether it's listening to a podcast or reading books, that started to change things for me. It started giving me different ideas. I mean, it's just incredible when you are in consistent mode of just educating yourself, devouring books, like different ideas come to you and you start implementing, different things in your business. But I had to think about how I was spending every minute of my day. When I was still working full time, I had 2 days off a month from my federal agent position. And those 2 days off a month, my team, so I built that team to produce the podcast, and we had to produce 12 to 15 interviews in one day. So they knew that they had to have 12 to 15 interviews scheduled for me every off day that I had from my federal agent position. I was also traveling 1 to 2 weekends a month to conferences all over the country and just networking as hard as I could go. And so I had to be so focused on how I was using my time. And I just encourage you to think about that as well. What's the highest and best use of every minute, that you're spending? So we get into some of the meat and potatoes behind a few different things here that's going to help you over time to build loyalty and to help you to build to the machine, the ability to raise more money. So I had clarity about our mission, our cause, also my family, they were on that mission, right? And also my team. So, I talked about my wife, Chelsea, and being on the same mission, but I want you to think about it as a family and then also even as your team. You want your team to be on that mission. Believe it or not, your team members and investors, which we'll talk about in a minute more, but they want to be a part of something bigger than just financial gain. And you hope that they are. Otherwise, it's going to be hard for them to put their heart into the work that they're doing for you, right? But in this case, like I want my team to love our mission, right? I want them to know about it. I want them to be motivated by, that mission, right? And so, when the foundation, when we partner with a new family or we have a child that gets to come home to their forever family and we've been, from a family that we've partnered with, I want the team to know that. And it energizes them like, wow, we're a part of something bigger than just a paycheck, right? And so I want you to think about that. It's so important. So I want to ask you this. I want you to really think about, like, do you know what your mission is? Do you know it? And obviously you can see the questions there, but in case you're listening while doing something else, but does your spouse know your mission? Does your team know your mission? Do your investors know what your mission is? And that was crucial for me. And so I did not plan it this way. The Lord had a different plan, but I did not plan it this way. But when I started going to events and networking as hard as I could go, I would go up to somebody. Everybody says, "What do you do?" Right? We've all heard that. You shake hands. What do you do? And we get to talking. And I share about our foundation. I say, well, my wife and I have started a foundation that's helping families adopt children, and our investors get to play a role in that, because we have a commercial real estate business, and while it doesn't affect their returns, they're still helping us in a big way to commit. We commit half of our personal profits to that foundation to help these children, and so, or something like that. And so, when I'm led with our mission, right? I led with talking about our why, our mission. The whole conversation is much different, right? And we'll talk about that a little more in a minute, but the whole conversation is different, and there is a different relationship that's built here. Okay. And it's different questions that follow. And so then their questions are more toward, well, wait a minute, tell me about that. What about adoptions? Or what about, these children? Or what about the foundation? How's that connected to your commercial real estate business? Or, right. And then it's around this different thing. And then they see passion in me come out, right, about helping these children and about adoption and our children. And so it's a very different conversation than, when there's 100 people or even 25 people at a meetup. When everybody's talking about real estate, everybody's talking about their deal, everybody's talking about almost the same stuff, right? And so this way, you're very different. You're standing out, and it's in a good way, right? And so that's what started happening. And also, I noticed, let's say it's the next day or even a week later or 2 weeks later, when I would follow up with these people, guess what? They remember who I am, because it was a different conversation. There was a different connection that's made, right? So finding your mission, what's the cause you're passionate about? Working for something other than financial gain, and just think about, why are you in business? And why are you in business? Sharing your mission, must put it in words, ingrain it into everything you do. Like, can you put it into words? Okay. And most people can't. Most people do not know what that mission is or haven't really thought about it, but I encourage you to think about it. The financial gain will come as well. But man, you have to be about something bigger than just money, and your team, your investors, your family, they all want to be about something bigger too, whether they admit it or not. So know, like, trust, and there's something that's missing. We've all heard this. And I would ask you now, if I was on stage, I would say, who knows what this is? But there's something that is missing from this. Everybody hears about that triangle: know, like, and trust. They have to know you first, and they have to like you before they're going to trust you. Yes, that makes sense, right? But I still say, if you want to not only get somebody to partner with you on one project and raise a lot of money, but on many, many projects over years, and even desire to partner with you, like hold their funds to partner with you on the next project that you have versus partnering with somebody else, guess what? You got to have something else, because that one thing is missing from this, and you got to have loyalty. Once you have that loyalty behind you, I mean, you're almost unstoppable to some extent, of course, but you must build loyalty. And it is a long-term game. It's a long-term way of thinking, and it's doing the things now. So, hey, you are building a business. It's going to happen faster than most, but it's not going to happen overnight either. But it's going to help you to quickly rise to the top and above your peers. No doubt about it, when you can have loyalty. And so one thing too, I want to say here, you think about Apple. I would say, how many of you are Apple fans, right? And if you are, you're probably going to have an Apple phone. You're going to have the earbuds. You're going to have maybe an Apple Watch. You're probably going to have an iPad or a Mac. You're going to have all these things, right, that are Apple. And most people, they see that Apple, they just assume it's a great product. Right? A DVD player, a monitor. They're going to have all those things that are by Apple, right? There's so much loyalty behind that because we just have to have that next product. Or even Harley Davidson. People tattoo the Harley Davidson logo across their back or on their arm. That is loyalty right there. That individual is probably going to own a Harley Davidson the rest of their life, right? And they're even willing to permanently put the logo on their body where they show it to all their friends. Right. And even then their friends are going to ask them about it. And not that I expect our investors to tattoo their, our logo on them, but that would be some loyalty right there. But we do want that level of loyalty. But we have to think about how to build that. And by having a mission, it's going to help you in a big way. So you have to show up to give. You have to lead with your mission. And I tell you to forget about win-win when you're meeting with investors or you're networking. show up to give, show up for that other person to get to win, and you'll win also. But you are playing the long game. So mission first. Don't forget about the conversation, the connection. Even after a meetup like this, you see somebody, reach back out to them after this. So it's easier, obviously, in person, but any kind of virtual event, you can still reach out to people, say through LinkedIn or Facebook, and start that conversation, right? Hey, I just saw you, in this group. I'd love to chat and see what you're about. But tell them what your mission's about. Tell them who you are outside of just your business or this thing that you're doing. And I'm telling you, there is a different connection that's made. I've seen it happen hundreds of times for myself. Again, I didn't plan it that way. I didn't even realize it in the very beginning, but I started seeing that happen where it is very different. And they're even the conversation, the follow-up conversation is very different. It's very different. We're not going straight to the deal or the numbers or the market or those things. Man, it is just more getting to know one another. They want to know more about that thing, that your mission. Again, I've talked about a lot of that, but yeah, what are you going to talk about? And I like to say too, like, if you have 5 minutes with someone, what are they going to remember about you? Like, have you thought about that? What are they going to remember about you? How are you sharing who you are or what you're about? Hopefully you're asking them about who they are. But what is your mission? How are you going to put that into words? Overcoming challenges, right? Not easy. My mindset had to change. And I mean, everything about what I did had to change. My old schedule, yes, was just absolutely insane, but now I get to make my schedule, right? It took a long time of just gritting down and not being willing to give up, right? But that mission also drove our entire family. And I say too, I had to even paint that mission and that vision for our children too, like where we're going. Like, it's not going to be this way forever, but this is where we're going. This is our mission. Look at these people that we're able to help as well, and so it helps them to just not feel like it's going to last forever when you're really doling it out. I mean, over a long period of time. All right, let's get into some questions. It can be anything about scaling or capital raising or anything you all want.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Whitney. That's really a unique way to look at things, right? Now, how do you, if we use an example, like how do you actually incorporate it in your, I don't know, you speak to an investor, he's investing, let's say, X amount of dollars. How does he see the conversion into, let's say, kind of the adoption thing later on? It's for follow-up conversations as well. I'd be curious. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, the foundation and just to clarify there too, like the foundation and LifeBridge Capital are two totally separate entities, right? They're not connected legally in any way, right? It's just our personal profits, and there's other donors now that also give to that. But I tell you, investors, they know that they're playing a role in that. And so even, we put out, investors know that they invest in a deal, they're helping us, right, to help more families. And so even updates about the foundation will go to our investors so they see like what's happening because of the investment they made with us, right? And so they don't have to give to it. It's not a portion of any part of the deal that they're, is going towards the foundation or anything like that. But they just know that they're part of a bigger mission. They're still making a great return, monthly distributions, all those things, but they at least know that they're part of something bigger than just building financial wealth.
Mm-hmm. And there's it's a sort of communicating the results of your, your mission in subsequent conversations, etc., and like kind of like giving some images of that, and like to people in this sense, it's more so than let's say I know like some businesses they might have, let's say 1% of their profit given for a given cause or like a different kind of more numerical perspective, but it's more of like actually engaging them is what you're saying. Like
right. Yeah. Putting out there to investors that, hey, you're helping us with this. We're grateful for your partnership, not only in this project, but also in this other mission that, that you're really a part of just by investing with us.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. And yeah, we have a question on the chat. So could you talk about scaling networking while staying compliant to 506B or 506C?
Yes. So obviously, I'm not an attorney. I'll say that right off the bat. But yes, you definitely have to think about, are you 506B, 506C, and can you promote a deal? Can you blast it out? Can you not? So every project that we have done has been 506B up to this point, except for we launched a fund. We have a fund open right now that's 506C, by the way. It is 506C, so I can blast that out. But anything before that, I could not. It had, had to have that pre-existing relationship. So you talk about scaling, networking while staying compliant. Well, it's for me, it was developing that thought leadership platform, right? Creating that podcast, that daily podcast that helped me to get in front of thousands of people, right? And even, really be shoulder to shoulder, for say, virtually, with thousands of experts in the business, right? That is, as far as scaling, networking, it's about educating, right? I can promote educational content, as much as I want, right? I cannot promote a deal unless it's 506C deal, but 506B, I cannot promote those projects, right? Except to our network that I have a pre-existing relationship with. And so scaling, hey, it's about who you are, your business, your mission, those things. It's not about a specific deal, unless it's 506C, then obviously you can talk about it. But the podcast has been a game changer for the scaling networking, because remember, you're interviewing these guests and then they are also promoting that to their network, right? So you're helping promote them, but they're also helping promote you. Also. And so some type of thought leadership platform is a great way to help promote yourself as an expert and really for you to educate yourself in a big way. It's been like a university to me. It's cost as much as a university as well. But it's just a great way to educate yourself and blast yourself out to many people's networks, without actually even worrying about the legal component, because you're not talking about a deal.
And you mentioned at the beginning, so kind of also on the scaling part, scaling from, being able to raise like 250K within a couple of months to actually, doing like 10 million within hours. Now it's obviously through having a thought leadership platform, but what about if you would like to speak for our audience for some of the funnels or like additional automations that help drive that? It's having the podcast, getting people within your community into your community, but from there, how do you actually get from that point to actually bringing them and like building the trust and like having this whole funnel of trust building and getting them to invest in your deals?
Yeah, I would say early on, I did a very poor job of this. And remember, I was still working full time. I was doing a daily podcast. I was traveling. We were doing some deals. It was intense, to say the least. And that is one thing I did not do a great job at early on, was having funnels in place, ways to automate some emails and have those created. I was doing it manually, which is, I would not recommend completely. Some things you need a personal touch with. But for me, now somebody signs up on the website. Obviously they hear the podcast, they hear me on a place like this even, or maybe I speak at an event. They go sign up on the website. They get a call, usually from somebody on our team almost that day, maybe right away, or within 24 hours. And so they get a call. So there's that personal touch, right? They also get an email. They'll get a text message as well, telling them, if they missed the call, anything like that. And ultimately, there's different pipelines that we have, different types of emails, depending on where they sign up on the website, or if I've had a call with them, or if somebody on the team has had a call with them. There's different things that will happen, right? And so if it's a team member that has that call with them, well, then, the emails are addressing them from them. But then there's also chains of emails that are educational from me. So it may be like, if you could think of 25 or 50 different topics that you could just talk about, like 2 minutes each, right? Or a minute even, like start creating videos. That's what we did. We have, I don't know how many of those now. And so somebody on our team just started creating lists of potential emails for us to send out for educational purposes for our investor base, right? And they are, anything you can think of around the commercial real estate business, or things that passive investors need to know. So once a week or about every 10 days or so, they get a new email from us, and it may be a 1 to 2 minute video of me just explaining something, right? And so we're kind of constantly staying in front of them, but it's something short, something educational, that's beneficial. It teaches them something, and so it's a positive thing, just staying in front of them. And then also, having that person on my team to help me with that has been crucial, right? That if you can find somebody and outsource a little bit of that, or at least the thought process of putting some of that stuff together, or the components on the back end, so useful. So you're not having to spend that time on that. But getting them to the call with you is so important. So if they haven't had a call with you yet, you can't blast that deal out, that 506B deal, that you're doing. So you got to get them to that call, right? So leave them a message, wait a week, call them again, say, hey, you signed up on the website. I mean, they signed up with you, right? So there's some interest there already. So reach back out, send them a message, say, hey, we'd love to follow up with you and answer any questions you have, or help you in any way I can, with commercial real estate, whatever that may be. So reach back out, follow up, be consistent, and then stay in front of them with something educational, something that's helpful, those things, but something that's very short and sweet. So they know they're not going to spend 30 minutes reading an email, most likely. So something short and sweet.
Okay, yeah, that was a great answer right there. Next question we have is, so when do you know to start a syndication instead of pursuing a second position loan? And what is the difference between the two?
So I would like to know if this is referring to like a JV versus a syndication, as probably what they're asking, a second position loan versus a syndication. Anyway, if that person would clarify a little bit, that would be great. But we'll talk about JV versus syndication. If you're, partnering with someone on a project, let's say Stefan and I are going to go buy a fourplex together, and we're just going to partner on it. Hey, we're both are going to help out with that project. We're both going to be looking at the deal. We may both go by there and whatever. He's doing some of the maintenance. I may do some of the maintenance or collect rent. Well, that is a joint venture, right? That is it's a partnership. We're both working on that project. And so we can partner on that project. But when you start syndicating, it's like you have people that are partnering with you that are completely passive, but expect a return. Right? They expect a return, but they are doing nothing, right? I mean, they're not helping with that project in any way. Okay. And at that point, you're syndicating a deal. I mean, there's even people that are doing single family projects that technically are syndicating, right? They have other investors that are doing nothing, that are completely passive. But again, you should consult with your attorney. And I would encourage you to have a securities attorney, SEC attorney, somebody that's familiar with those regulations. But, I hope that that's kind of what that person was talking about. But if not, I would love some clarification there as far as to start a syndication instead of, I know you said second position loan, but just want to ensure that that's referring to what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Aaron, feel free to speak up. I believe here he said yes. So it sounds like that is it actually. And the prior question with regards to the 506C and 506B sounds like there's a bit of kind of concern as for how you scale it and simultaneously stay compliant with the regulation. Now, and I think to your answer, it's a little bit harder done in 506B. Okay, you need to ensure the pre-existent relationship is there, and then maybe it's sort of more set, but easier to scale in the other scenario.
So the thing about 506B is that you can take up to 35 non-accredited investors, right? And so you need to know who your network is. Like, who are you going to raise money from today, right? And if most of them are non-accredited, then you need to do a 506B. And if you have, and here's the thing too, just because you can advertise, it does not mean that people are going to invest with you. Right? It doesn't mean that people are going to trust you, right? You've not built that know, like, trust, and loyalty component. If you haven't done that, then 506C, it may not do you any good. Okay. You can blast it from the rooftops in, you can put it on billboards if you're doing a 506C deal. But everyone then has to be accredited. And then you do have to take them through a accreditation verification process. So you are personally, whatever your company is required to verify the accreditation of each investor that invests in a 506c deal. And so, like I said, just because you can't advertise and everybody thinks this, well, I'm going to be able to blast it from the rooftop and then I'm going to be able to raise all this money. Well, investors going to ask you, well, tell me about, your track record, right? Tell me about the deals you've purchased. Tell me about the deals you've exited, you've sold. Maybe by doing a 506c that helped you get in front of that investor, but they're not likely to invest, right? And so I would encourage you, again, focus on the relationships, focus on how you're building that loyalty component, because over time, just like us, we did all 506b deals until this fund. And now we have, and so many sophisticated investors want to invest in it, but they can't. We're going to have other ways that they can invest. But you have to have that loyalty component amongst thousands of investors before I would probably encourage you to do a 506c deal, right? And unless maybe some people will have the money raised ahead of time, they'll still do a 506c deal just so they can advertise it and really not even expect any new investors to invest that time, but really just a way for them to advertise and blast out a deal. That's a technique some people will use also.
And so you spoke about kind of utilizing your time and, like making sure, sort of to use every minute, and be productive. And then also we spoke about the automation and scaling component. So like how does it work for you? Like if you take a typical day, like how does utilizing and that's, you did mention in the case of, okay, that's your recording day where you have to do like 14 interviews for the podcast or something like that. But let's say on another typical day, like how does it work for you being productive and using every minute? And, if you could kind of guide us through some way of yours, like what time you wake up, or I don't know if that's something that you would be willing.
It is something that I am itemizing like all the time. I am thinking about this probably way too much, honestly. Like, how am I using my time? Because really, I've missed a lot of time with my family over the last few years, and it's like I want to get that back, right? But it's a struggle as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. I bet a lot of you probably struggle with, like shutting that off. Right? like punching the clock at the end of the day and leaving your business in the office, right? It's very difficult to do. But for me, my alarm goes off about 4:50. You asked about like morning routine a little bit, but 4:50, alarm goes off, man. It's just time, like about 10 minutes, just wake up and really get coffee started and drink some water. And then, coffee's made, and then I'll read for about an hour, till from like 5 to 6. And this is time with my wife as well. So she's reading, she's up then as well. She's reading then. We're both praying together, or, reading the Bible. And then we also I'll usually have another like educational book of some kind, a personal development or real estate book, whatever it may be, that I'm reading at the same, in addition during that time. And then also, then say 6 to 6:30, exercise, some type of exercise. Sometimes it's riding a horse now. It's not just, an exercise routine, but some type of exercise in the morning. And then it's, shower, breakfast, and to the office. But often I'm trying to have breakfast with the family too. So I'm trying to be more purposeful about blocking that time during the day, breakfast and lunch, where I can actually have those meals with the family while I'm working at home. So that morning routine is pretty standard. But then throughout, say, a Monday is usually team meetings until noon. Like I'll meet with almost every team member personally or one-on-one, and going through certain KPIs. What are we working on? Where are we at on this? How are we doing? Like, let's make some decisions about these things so we can move forward, right? Whatever that may be. And they have different ways that we track different analytics that they really report to me during that time. And so we can talk about what's working and what is not. But that's Monday. And Monday afternoons, I try to leave pretty open. And sometimes I'll put other meetings in there that are kind of unscheduled, whether that's with investors or whether that's with new potential partners or whatever. Tuesdays are usually my recording days now. I'll do 6 or 7 interviews on those days now. I'm not doing 12 or 15 anymore. I do not have to do that many in a day. And so I don't. It's a crazy day. Even doing 6 or 7 is a pretty full day. But even those days, sometimes I'll still be interviewed on other shows or take calls, those things. Wednesdays. So something that happened to me recently, and I'll share this with you because I want you to know this. Your week will just fill up, right? If you let it, it will it'll just fill up, right? And if I have open time on my calendar, it's amazing what my team will put in there. Like there'll be something that, I mean, they're just meeting after meeting. It'll be something that just fills up my day. And a few months back, actually, I guess it was like February, I had an all-day meeting scheduled. And the night before, we received a big snow, for us anyway, a big snow, and it got canceled. Well, immediately that night, I'm thinking, man, how am I going to use this time? I got like a whole day here, right? And so that next morning was one of my most productive mornings that I've had in a long time. Okay. There was nothing like scheduled. I had time to like just think, right, and start just knocking stuff out. And so I told my assistant right then, hey, we've got to implement this. I have to have more just time to think, more time to just work, on top of the business, right? Instead of in the business. And so every Wednesday now for almost, until like 11 or 12 o'clock, there's nothing scheduled. We call it productivity time. There's nothing there. And sometimes I do have to schedule a meeting there. But our goal is for me not to. Thursdays, Fridays are usually full of investor calls. New investors. So that new intro call, right? Or, where I'm talking to them, answering their questions, and sharing about LifeBridge Capital or myself, and documenting, those calls, right? So if we're doing a 506B deal, hey, I can say, I had this call with this person on this day. This is what we talked about. We talked about, they know the risks of investing, all these things, and before they ever invested with us. That's typical. Like this week, I'm traveling Thursday, Friday, Saturday, this weekend, next week to different conferences or speaking. And so that changes and fluctuates some, but that's a typical week for me.
Oh, that's quite impressive. Quite impressive there. And so next question, do you deal with institutional investors? If not, is there any specific reason not to do? If you do, how do you find and establish a relationship with them? So I guess it's kind of like, do you accept, be it preferred equity positions from
right.
other institutional capital?
So we have not, we do not, I don't pursue them. And there are a few reasons, and not to say we never will, but at least at the moment, we haven't needed to, right? When we can raise as much capital as we can, there's not a need to. That institutional investor, they are going to require a lot of control over that project, right? And they're going to be more expensive as well. And so it's going to lower your returns or lower your profit for your business as well. But they're just going to have a lot more say in that deal. And we want to be the operators personally. And again, we just haven't needed to. And so if there was a need for that, I wouldn't say I would not ever reach out or create those relationships. I do have relationships. I've had some of them reach out to want to partner with us. But it just hasn't, it does change the process. If we needed 10 million for a project, as opposed to us working with 250 investors or 300 on that deal. Think about how easy that would just be to have one person come in and write a check, right? So there are some pros and cons there to both sides of that. But with our ability to raise money right now, we chose to not go that route.
Mm-hmm. And if you can talk about a little bit more on the investment side, finding deals, let's say, because you went over the leads process, I think, quite well, but what is your process as far as scaling and systematizing and on the acquisition side? Yeah,
great question. And we're fixing to hire an acquisitions director or a vice president of that position, just so everybody knows. And so my business partner, it's building the team, right? His focus. So before he and I partnered, it was my focus as well, thinking about, how am I going to find deals while I'm doing all these other things? And finally, he and I met, and his skill set is around underwriting and finding deals. And so he had broker relationships, right? But he didn't have a network. He didn't have the ability to raise money, where I'd been working on that for a long time. And so when we partnered, we were able to move very fast. And so what happened, though, is our first project together was 28 million, I think. And so the next one, I think, was 29 or 30 million. And so that's not common. The Lord did a lot of work there, but that is not the typical first few deals for a new group, but on the acquisition side, the broker connections have been our means to finding almost every project. Our property management company has brought a deal or two to us as well. We have an amazing relationship with them. I think they're the biggest property manager in our market. They've been there for like 30 years and we're their biggest client. But we've built those relationships again, going back to, what does that connection mean to you? What is that relationship? How are you handling that relationship when you're speaking to them? And are you caring about them and building a deeper relationship than just business? And so things like that happen. On the acquisition side, we are fixing to hire an acquisitions lead, so we can move into other markets too and help my business partner to do other roles, right, that he's really good at. And so finding deals has been broker connections, reaching back out to brokers who have sent us deals in the past, and being true to our word with those brokers as well. Oh, and following up, telling them why you don't like deals, giving good feedback has been very good as also.
Got it. Yeah. That's a great summary. And do you guys have any other questions before we wrap up? Okay, so I'm gonna go with a last question for today. So if we, so let's say, so you went over, it's quite curious. You were saying your first syndication was actually 28 million. Is that, or your first partner syndication with?
Yeah, so I partnered with a mentor on our first two projects that were like 40 to 60 million. Okay. And then, but then the first project that my business partner and I did together was 28 million.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's uncommon indeed, right? That's kind of jumping into like very, very big deal size. So what's your profile? What was your profile of a desired deal then? And you did mention that he's the one who does more of the underwriting. You have your acquisitions director now as well. But what was your desired deal that was, your perfect focus and like target at the time? And what is it now, like in terms of, I don't know, holding periods, IRR, or whichever measures you might be after, and like at that time versus now?
Yeah, I would say not a whole lot has changed as far as the type of deal that we would look for then versus, I mean, some has obviously, but I think at that point we would have taken anything that was probably 10 to 20 million. We were probably thinking much smaller, but then, once we had an opportunity for this project, we thought, no, we can do it, and it's thought we had enough connections, and thank the Lord we did. We were able to close on it, but, mid to late 70s vintage, early 80s value add type projects, that haven't been touched in many years as far as remodeling, under market rents, all those things that many of us talk about often. But that was the type of projects we were looking for, and mostly in Colorado Springs. And now, I mean, we purchased a Class A project in Boise. We have 3 developments happening right now in Boise as well. But that is market specific. I would not be open to just doing a development just anywhere, right? I mean, that market is just exploding. Both of them are, but it's very market specific. Even the Class A project, and we bought that last August, so a year ago, and it's already surpassing our 3rd year projections, right? So it's very market specific, but we've opened up to some Class A projects and some development, while still doing value add. So we have a project we're closing the end of this month. It's a small portfolio. It was also built 70s, 80s timeframe. And then we hope to have a contract this week on another project that was built in the 70s. And so very similar types of deals that we were doing, even a few years ago. But the biggest thing I think that's changed there too is our just ability to raise money, more money, be able to do larger deals. And so instead of limiting it, say to 20 to 30 million, we'd look at $50 million projects now too.
That's great. Okay, thank you so much, Whitney, for joining us today. This was outstanding. What is the best way for people to reach to you?
Yeah, lifebridgecapital.com. You should email me, Whitney, at lifebridgecapital.com, or you can call or text me 540-585-4338. Be happy to connect with anyone.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for joining us today. Bye, guys.